Hello and welcome to Films for the Very First Time. My name is Jordan, and with me, as always, is Casey McGeorge.
Oh, there is no Casey, only Zool. How's it going, everybody?
It's going well. It's going well. Yes, we are going to be talking Ghostbusters Afterlife, which is the reboot sequel. I don't know how you would say that, but it is technically the third entry chronologically in the Ghostbusters canon when it comes to films.
Yeah. So I what I found out is I actually own the technical third Ghostbusters movie in the canon, or in the series that's not canon. So either through some sort of weird promo, or I think it was part of the download when I got a code for one of the downloads for Ghostbusters. I have the 2016 Ghostbusters movie available to watch for free in my movies anywhere.
You
And
know
then
what I think it is? Because
they
I
added
think,
it. It wasn't because it wasn't considered canon when they made one of the box sets or something. It
yeah,
got
yeah.
add people were complaining, so I think they added it as a free download with those things.
What it might have been is if you connected a certain number of accounts to Movies Anywhere as well.
I
Because,
think that too.
because
Yeah,
I think, I have a Fast and the Furious from that. And I think Ghostbusters was that, but I had already owned it. Like the new Ghostbusters,
yeah.
like the female Ghostbusters.
It was either part of like they added on the download or it was that, and because I was like, well, I can get it for free, that means I don't have to buy it. And if I had to buy it, I probably was never going to watch it. At least if it's free, there's a chance I can watch
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
like because I already have it. So yeah,
I watched it on an airplane, and it was fine for like an airplane ride. You know, I did fall asleep during the middle of that one though, and I did not watch the last like 10 minutes. So
plane
there you
landed,
go.
and you were just like, it is what it is.
Yeah, and I haven't gone back to finish it, so I don't know if I will. But this one, Afterlife, is the one that we're talking about. This one came out November 19th, 2021. It's directed by Jason Reitman, the son of the original director Ivan Reitman. For the first film, written by Gil Kenan and Jason Reitman. And of course, it stars Carrie Coon, Finn Wolfhard, McKenna Grace, Annie Potts, Ernie Hudson, Paul Rudd, and of course, Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray make appearances, as well as Sigourney Weaver. And Celeste O'Connor plays the female love interest of Trevor's. Okay, so I guess let's rewind to 2021 and where we were during this time. For me, I'd been tracking this movie since it was announced. I believe it was announced like 2019, and they showed like before they started filming like the Ecto one in the barn, and it was like a
Yeah,
teaser photo that Jason Reitman shared. And I remember I had to go to the bank that day. You know what it was? I was at work and I had to go to the bank to get documents because we were getting ready to settle for our house back in 2019. That's what it was. And I remember like going on my lunch break to the bank and like pulling up, and while I'm waiting for them to like come out and talk to me, I'm like scrolling through Twitter and seeing this, and I was like, "Oh my god, this looks great." Um, then they started filming later in 2019. Luckily, they filmed it all before COVID happened. The movie got pushed due to
like
COVID
twice.
to,
Didn't it get pushed like twice?
yes, I believe so. I think it was originally set for,
2020 and then 2021 and then later in 2021 or something.
yeah, I think it was supposed to be like March or June of 2020. All right,
Yikes!
July 2020. Then it got moved to March 5th, 2021. Then it got pushed to June 11th, 2021, and then to November 11th, 2021. So it got pushed like three times.
I think it worked out for
Uh,
him.
yeah, yeah. The movie made only 204 million, but it was enough to budget was only 75 million, which is amazing. Actually, it's not like one of those 100. It seems like every movie is 100, 150, 200 million at this point. So they got it in under the budget, or in a good budget, and it made enough for them to say, "Hey, let's make a sequel." And that's why we're recording this and picking this one out now, is because the sequel is coming around the corner on March 22nd, which by the time this episode releases,
It'll be
will be like a
close.
week or two, yeah, away from it. So that's pretty good. And we're going to talk about the sequel, Frozen Empire, when we get a chance to see it, and uh, cover that over on the other podcasts that we have. But yeah, so I guess where were you in 2021, and what? I know you're a Ghostbusters fan, so what kept you away?
All right, so let's rewind a little more than 2021. So as you know, and we talked about it last time we recorded, I wanted to rewatch the original two Ghostbusters before I watched this one, right? Just because, like, it honestly been probably a decade since I've seen the original two Ghostbusters. And I texted you once or twice while I was watching it. One of the things I texted you was I forgot how much I enjoyed the Ghostbusters franchise. So, like, when the original came out in '84, I was a kid, and it was a fantastic damn movie. I was living in upstate New York, in Albany at the time, state capital of New York. And, obviously it takes place in New York City, so it's a big deal. But it was just a great movie. And then part two came out, once again, fantastic. And I was a fan of the real Ghostbusters cartoon, which I just found out, like, only had one season. But I could have swore there were like 600 episodes or something when I was watching that as a kid. Maybe I just wasn't keeping track of the episodes very well. I don't know. But I love that. I love that cartoon as a kid.
I have it as 7 seasons.
Really?
Yeah,
Ugh.
for the real Ghostbusters.
I'm glad to hear that. There was something I saw. I only had like one, but it was a lot. I don't know.
It went
But it
from
was.
86 to 91.
It
But
was.
yeah.
I enjoyed that show. So, uh, as you get older, and especially as the internet grew, and then you start getting into like pop culture and movie websites, and you start hearing like they had been trying for years to get a sequel, like a Ghostbusters 3. They've been trying literally for years, but at one point, there was issues between Bill Murray and Harold Ramis that kind of stopped a lot of that. I think there was issues between, well, Bill Murray and take your pick, right? Let's be realistic here. A lot of it probably boiled down to Bill Murray and whoever you wanted to have issues with at the time. And they could never apparently agree on scripts at various times. And then maybe they would have, like, they kind of loosely agree on something, but then they'd all have different projects going on. By the time they were free, like, the Sony or whoever scrapped it and said no. So it's just a nightmare. And then the shirt I'm wearing, as you can see, if you're watching on YouTube, this was for the Ghostbusters video game that came out in 2008, 2009, somewhere in that range, which was a decent video game. And it had the voice talents of Dan Aykroyd. I believe Bill Murray. I don't think he did much, but it had some of the original cast members in there. And I think Dan Aykroyd was involved in it, and he, at the time, said he considered that Ghostbusters 3 because
Yeah, it got all of them back in it. This is kind of when
like
Harold Ramis and Bill Murray kind of bury the hatchet a bit here to get this thing going.
Yeah, because you played like an unnamed new Ghostbuster to the group, and Dan Aykroyd considered this for a long time to be the canon Ghostbusters 3. And it was decently received. I think the game probably got like 6 7s out of 10s. It wasn't groundbreaking, but it wasn't a horrible game by any means.
It was fun, and it was good to just have an experience in the universe again.
Yeah, to have those guys back and to be in the world, and have a proton pack and ghost traps. It was cool. And then once again, rumors about whatever. And then they came out with, I don't even know what it's technically called. And I feel bad saying it's the woman Ghostbusters movie, because that's part of the reason why a lot of people hated it so much was they thought like, oh, you got to have women Ghostbusters. I didn't look at the personal response. I looked at the critical response of that when I decided not to go see it, and it didn't look very good. Critically, it didn't do very well.
It leans more into the comedy. As somebody that's seen it, it leans more into the comedy of the time than, like, you know how if you watch Ghostbusters, it is funny.
Yeah.
But it has like an actual storyline with
Yeah.
like great, stuff like that. That was what was missing from the 2016 one. It's a lot of jokes and some of them are funny, but it felt empty.
And for the most part, like Kristen Wiig is a great actress in a lot of stuff she does. Melissa McCarthy, same thing. She's a great actress in a lot of stuff she does. I'm not a fan of Leslie Jones's comedy, but that's okay. Like, not everybody's comedy is for everybody, right? Like, I'm not gonna say she sucks or anything. Just like wasn't a fan of her. Okay, cool. But I saw the critical response to it, and it was a lot of the same thing you said. Like the story was flat. Some of the chemistry didn't seem right. Some of the stuff just seemed forced. So it was deemed critically it wasn't a good movie overall, right? So then I decided, okay, I'm just gonna skip that. Then I heard a couple years later, like, oh, they're coming out with a reboot, and I was like, didn't they just try this? Like, are we asking for this? Like, at the time, Ghostbusters was over 30 years old. Like, it just hit 40 for Christ's sake, I think, or it's about to hit 40. I think 84, 85. So it's coming up on the 40th anniversary here, right? So I saw, Ivan Reitman's son is making the movie, and I'm like, okay, like that helps. Like he has a connection to the original in some way, right? Through his father, and he was actually one of the boys in the birthday party from Ghostbusters 2. So I'm sure he feels a responsibility to do it right. He's not really necessarily doing it for a cash grab. But then at the same time, like, Harold Ramis had passed away. What we didn't know was Ivan Reitman was about to pass away. I just, at the time, I thought, I don't know if we really need this. Like, it didn't seem like it was necessary. And then I'm like, we got Paul Rudd in a Ghostbusters movie, and like the kid from Stranger Things. And I'll be honest, I initially thought like, just because he dressed up as a Ghostbuster in one of the seasons, like someone thought this was a good idea. Now, I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one who thought that initially. Like, I can't be the only one who was like, they pushed the nostalgia with Stranger Things in the 80s, and they even brought back like the new Coke. But like, now we're going a little bit too far. So I just kind of skipped over because I'm like, maybe at some point it'll come on streaming and I'll get bored, check it out or something. But I decided I just wasn't going to pay my money, especially when it came out in 2021. COVID was still a lot bigger. It was still a pretty big thing, and some movie theaters were probably only going at half capacity, or you had to wear masks in theaters, and there was a lot of stuff. I'm not against wearing a mask, but I'm also like, I don't want to go to a movie theater.
Not comfortable sometimes, yeah.
If I'm gonna go to a movie theater and possibly get sick with COVID, it's gonna be because it's like a hell of a movie, like
right.
Endgame. Like it's got to be like something like I can't wait to go see. Honestly, I was like, I can wait to see Ghostbusters after. Like, this is not worth the prospect of me getting COVID and possibly dying for.
Right.
That's where it kind of boiled down to. And then I just never got around to, life got in the way, and I just never got around to picking it up and seeing it. And then the trailer for I saw the reviews were pretty good. So I was like, okay, well, it's not as bad as I thought. Gave me more reason. And then I saw the trailer for Afterlife, and I was like, okay, I really need to see, or Frozen Empire. I saw the trailer for Frozen Empire. I was like, okay, I really need to see Afterlife before I go see Frozen Empire. And then I decided, well, if I'm going to do that, I got to watch the first two first. And then we talked about that, so I watched the first two, and then I ordered this on HD, and got the disc in the mail, and here we are.
Yeah, here we are. So we're going to dive into Ghostbusters Afterlife here. I think Casey wrapped it up pretty well there with everything that's kind of happened in between the second film and
I didn't mean to
Afterlife.
steal your thunder on that.
No, no,
Like,
you're good. You're good.
I wasn't sure if you were going to cover that. I thought you were, but it just kind of came out. My bad.
No, you're good. I think you did it better than I could. There was a ton of time where we thought, we're never getting another Ghostbusters film, right? Once Harold Ramis passed, you're like, I think the time is past.
Yeah, honestly, once he had passed away, I even think Dan Aykroyd came out and said, like, with Harold gone, like, he took it upon himself to kind of speak for everybody, but he was like, we can't do another movie without Harold. It wouldn't be right. It's not fair. And he didn't feel comfortable at one point doing another movie without Harold Ramis. And I could understand why. And I think I texted you watching the first one. I was like, man, I kind of miss Harold Ramis. Like, I didn't appreciate him, and I didn't appreciate him as Egon until I got older, and I was able to really appreciate the dry sense of humor and everything that Egon brought to that group. Like, as a kid, I just thought he was a nerd, and that was it, right? But then as I got older and got into more things and learned to understand some things a lot better and broadened my horizons, I was like, oh man, this dude's actually really cool.
See, I don't know what it was about him, but like as a kid, I feel like Egon was always my favorite. So like when you said that, I thought that was funny because like for me, it was like I feel like most people's favorite is probably Venkman because it's Bill Murray, but mine was always like Ray and Egon were like my two that I was like, oh, I love these guys,
I
even as like
liked
a little
Ray.
kid.
Ray was awesome, and I liked Ernie Hudson's character there.
Yes.
Just because he was like he wasn't a scientist like the other three. He was just like everyday normal dude who,
Yeah.
and like he said, he was looking for a job.
Yeah. All right, so let's dive in. So this takes place 32 years after Ghostbusters 2. And it takes place in Somerville, Oklahoma, where we kind of open up with this prologue, right? Without any speaking lines at all. And it is focusing on an older Egon Spengler who's shot pretty well here, where you can't really see his face, but you know it's him without them. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I was gonna ask. I know they didn't put a lot about the story out before the movie came out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as I started watching this, okay, and when I saw the shape, I just not counting the fact that he's a little bit older, so he's going to be a little bit bigger in places because that happens as you get to be an older man, right?
Right.
But especially, mainly the hair, right? I was like, oh, that's Egon. I wasn't sure if because I had just watched in the last 2 weeks the. Hey, I don't know what happened. Sorry about that, but I don't know. I don't know if it was if you were meant to recognize him or if people were meant to be kept in the dark about that. But I know I was able to look at that and be like, oh, that's old man Egon right there. Like, and then later on, I was like, oh, that little girl is a Spengler.
Yes. So I would say, as somebody that was following this, I had no clue Egon was going to show up at all. I think it was pretty accepted, especially looking at McKenna Grace dressed as Phoebe, that she was a Spengler, right? And I think in the trailer they show her going through the Ghostbuster wardrobe and how it kind of falls on the Spengler outfit.
Yeah, that was the first one, like when she opens it up in the closet right there.
And people were like, okay, she's probably a Spengler. But I had no clue we were going to open it like this. And I remember being in the theater, and when it opens up with Egon, I was like, hell yeah. And them not, it was good not having them speak. I don't know if this is CG or just like a double with prosthetic nose or something. Because like it's shot in a way where you never really see his face clearly. I'm thinking it's a double with some sort of prosthetic.
Yeah,
until we get to the ghost part at the end.
I think I read on IMDb as I was watching the movie, looking through the things. I don't know how accurate. I think one of them said it might have been Ivan Reitman with some that might have been his last movie appearance with some prosthetics on to play the older Egon. I don't know, But I did see from a couple different things that it like there was somebody who like physically played that part, and they used obviously great lighting and prosthetics to kind of cover that up. Now, did you get a sense in the theater that everyone else was able to recognize him, or was that not really able to be told in the
Hmm.
theater just because you've got you probably got an older crowd and a younger crowd, so
Well, I stood up in the middle and I took a poll of everybody. No, I'm just kidding. No, I don't really know. Like, there wasn't like a big gasp or anything. Um, I would think most people that were there. I mean, I was there probably like opening night. I feel like most people then would have known, but I don't know. Like, I know my mom knew. She went with me. Did my wife know? She's not a big Ghostbusters fan. I don't
okay.
think she. I don't think she knew.
And see, I think that's one of the ways they did that perfectly because
Yeah.
for older people like us who are fans of the original, right? We're probably able to look at that and be like, oh, that's old man Egon right there. But for anybody who's coming into the franchise fresh, who doesn't necessarily know the characters, right? Who may not know who it is, they have no clue who that person is. And for them it's just some random crazy dude who is holding stuff out and like his contraptions aren't working, right? And who ends up dying, you know. But so I think they did that perfectly because it caters to both sides of that fence of like, for those of you who know, you know. For those of you who don't, there'll be a reveal later on where you'll be able to be like, oh, okay. But, you know, it'll keep you in suspense for a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I think this is a really great prologue because it's action packed. There's not a lot of speaking, and it kind of gets a point across, I think, of everything that's going on, and it sets up something at the end too. Because once he dies, the ghost meter starts going off, which in my thought is that it's showing that his ghost has lingered. Right? It's like right after he
Yeah.
died and the other ghost is dead, like the other ghost is left,
The meter that was
the
under
meter
the chair
stops
started.
and then it starts going once he like fully dies. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I picked up on that too. Like, oh, he's not leaving this house. He's there.
Yeah, and I think this is a perfect way not to like go through the whole movie right now, but like I think it's a perfect way to kind of honor Harold Ramis in this
Pandering.
without like recasting pander, right? Like you get these shots where it's very, like we said, probably a double with some prosthetics and just like really good lighting, tricking everything. And then um like when Phoebe's down there and it's just like Egon's ghost is moving the light around for
The
her and
chessboard, even
conversing
before that,
through
the
that the
chessboard.
chessboard. Yeah,
Simple
you can
stuff
do
like
all of
that.
that without having an actor present, but the character is present, and I liked that the character was still present.
And for people like us who, like I said, who are fans of this franchise, I could kind of feel like Egon is still there between, like I said, the chessboard and all like leading her from her room to that other hidden room with the lights and everything, and then she gets down there and, like you said, holding the lights and showing her where everything is and stuff, and it's like
Yeah, I
that.
love the exchange when she's like, "How did you make this part so small?" And he just like shines the light on his degrees.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, come on, do you not know who I am? And it's like, okay, you're, yeah. And she's like, yeah, you're a genius. And I'm just gonna say this now, right? And I do not mean this in any sort of weird, creepy way, but I love this girl who played. I can't remember her name.
Phoebe,
I
yes.
love this girl who played Phoebe. I don't know if she studied up and watched the movies to get the sense of the character. I think the hair and makeup department did a great job between the glasses and her hair to kind of give it that same look. But
Her
maybe I'm
voice
not.
delivery though is like Egon.
The way she talked, the
Yes.
way her little things, like the way she pushed her glasses up constantly.
Yep. Yep.
I was like, This girl has captured Harold Ramis and Egon in how she's doing this. Like, I don't know if she did a fantastic job in this role. I know she's done some other stuff. I looked her up. I've never seen anything else she did anything in. I
See,
know
I
she's like
have,
17 or something, but she was unbelievable in this role.
but she was totally unrecognizable. So I had to look her up because the name sounded familiar, and I'm like, where do I know this girl from?
Yeah, even the
And then
photo of her I saw, I was like, this is the
so
same
different.
girl?
She's in Haunting of Hill House as one of the little kids versions of an adult, and then I had to look up pictures of her in that, and I'm like, oh my god, I remember her, but she's so different looking, and apparently she was like a young person, like a young Once Upon a Time, the show that was like a Disney show on ABC.
Yeah,
She was
with all
like
the fairy tale
young Jennifer
characters.
Morrison. Yeah, she was like young Jennifer Morrison in that, and I'm like, that's crazy. I don't remember that. I didn't Google like what she looked like back then because she would have been like
She would have been, like she
7.
said in this,
She
like
would have
10
been
or
like 7
12 or
or 8
something.
at that
Yeah.
point. Yeah. But no, she played the role so well. Um,
You know how they say some
she's
stuff
just great.
skips a generation,
Yeah.
right? Like this was one of those. She played the part so well. I could kind of see like, okay, there was Egon, and then as we get to it, we find out the family gets evicted and they move to this house in Oklahoma, and
Yeah.
that was his daughter won't say his name or anything, but then I kind of got the grasp that like, okay, that's Egon's daughter, right? Her mom.
Yep.
And then when I saw her and her mannerisms, how she talked, I was like, oh, okay. This definitely skipped a generation. Like I said, she is a Spangler, like without a shadow of a doubt. Like I know who that is supposed to be. And
Right.
it's
Right.
one of those like I wonder if people knew coming into the franchise were able to really tell, but for people like us, that was one of those you're like, oh yeah, that like I know who you
I also have to point out this is what else I saw her in. She was in Captain Marvel as a young Carol.
are. Wow.
Yeah. I have to go back and watch that and see because she's like a master of disguise or something, man. Like I don't remember her being in that movie, but
Even the little jokes she had were fantastic.
yeah, yeah, she was good. Um, so they move out, right? Like you said, they get kicked out of the apartment, not being able to make their payments, and we kind of get like a little montage of a road trip. But
To the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma. Jeez.
I love this part when Finn Wolfhard's character is named Trevor. They don't say his name until like late, I think. But he's looking around. He's like, "Oh, not one bar," referring to service. And then his mom being like, "Oh, there better be a bar." And Phoebe's just like, "That's funny." But the house is locked when they get there, and they're going to, the house that we recognize from the prologue, which is where Egon died. They tell Phoebe to break in. Apparently, she's good at that stuff.
Okay, did you recognize the Bible verse leading up to the house?
It's the one from the first movie, right?
Yeah, did you recognize that at all or no?
Yeah.
I did not. I did not. I like I said, as I was watching this, and then I started looking stuff up as I'm going through, and then that was one of the things that came up on the trivia section on IMDb. Was like it was the same verse that Ray stated from the first movie, and I was like, okay, I thought it sounded a little familiar, but I was like, okay, you know, I
Ray
mean,
also has it on his arm.
yeah, I saw that as well. Like, yeah, he got it with a tattooed on his arm, but I was like, in all fairness, like that could have been a fake Bible verse, like Ezekiel 25:17. Like I wouldn't have,
Yeah.
if it wasn't real, I wouldn't have doubted it.
Yeah, no, it's these little touches. This movie ties in so well with the first one. Actually, we'll get to some of this stuff as we get to it. Um, but like it expands the lore of the first movie. Um, so Phoebe breaks in. They get inside, and we get our first tremor that we're getting in the town here, and they're hiding underneath the table. Um, and Trevor's like, "Hey, at least we're only here a week," and his mom's like, "Yeah, about that. We're gonna be staying here since we got evicted, pretty much."
Right.
Yeah. What would you do if your parents moved you out here and this house is like a piece of junk? How are you handling that?
Are they coming from New York City? Does it say where they were coming
Uh
from previously, or no?
I don't know. It kind of looked more like California or something.
Well, because I mean, especially Ray explains it later. Like
Oh,
Egon.
Chicago it says. Chicago on Wikipedia. So,
Okay, I mean Ray explains later that like Egon took all their gear and packed up, right? So I'm guessing
yeah.
everybody was still in New York City after their second, hurrah. So that's why I figured maybe it was New York City, the apartment they're moving out of. So I mean, okay, uh, Finn Wolfhard's character, he's what, 16, 17 in this, right? Actually, no, he's 15. He's 15.
Yeah, he
You find
says
out.
he's 17, but he is 15, yes.
So he's 15 in this, right? Uh, so imagine, okay, I know you don't live directly in Baltimore, right? Or do you? Where you live right
No,
on the
no,
outside.
I'm like 30, 40 minutes away.
But it's still close enough to kind of be considered Baltimore, right?
Yeah, like that's where I usually tell people I'm from,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now imagine if you were 15 and you just got packed, like you had to pack up and move to the middle of nowhere or go home. Like that's, I get it that there's probably more stuff that would be even worse, but that's got to be pretty traumatic to be like, wait a minute, like I'm moving from a major area where you're so used to having everything like at your fingertips,
Close by, yeah.
friends, family, places you go, your hangouts, and now you're going. It's bad enough to move somewhere else as a teenager, but now you're moving someplace that looks like it has a population of like 1,000 people or something.
Yeah.
Like,
That'd be rough though. I grew up in a town that's 1,000 people. We had one stoplight in the town I grew up in. So I understand what it's like to I kind of have both senses where I understand what it's like to do that, but I'm also like enough of a drive away to get somewhere. Like when you look at the Midwest, like Oklahoma and stuff, or even if you go up to like Idaho and the Dakotas, there's so much openness, right? Like, um, I remember taking a cross country road trip and we went from like Maryland over to Seattle and then back. And on the way back, I was just by myself. So I had to like plan more stops and like hotels and like plan ahead my where I'm eating. And when I was in like Montana, it would be like 80 miles between rest stops or 80 miles between certain food places that you're like, oh, I need to get gas now and I might as well eat now because it's going to be hours until I see something again.
I've taken many cross country trips, literally from like California to Texas to the East Coast and back and stuff. So get that. And Texas is the same way. Like, especially West Texas, the oil fields and the plains and everything over there. And it's the same thing. So I distinctly remember leaving El Paso, Texas, which is on the far west side of Texas. And I'm going to Fort Knox, Kentucky, right? So I got to go all the way through Texas to Dallas, up north a little bit, and cross over on I-40 to take it over to Kentucky. But remember, as I'm driving west, or I'm driving east, and as you said, those exits start getting farther and farther away. And then I remember seeing one where, like, I'm driving along, and it was like next exit 5 miles or whatever, gas, food, all this other stuff. And then as I got closer, the same thing. Like a sign came up. It was like gas next, next exit, gas. Next gas exit was like 75 miles. And it's like, oh, basically telling you if you don't get gas now, you might not be able to make it to the next exit. And, a lot, especially like I said, driving back and forth for the military, some of that stuff, it's flat. It's just incredibly flat. Where
It's
you
kind of
just
like how it is in Montana. You're just like flat plains as you're driving by.
and it's just like I'll never forget the last time I drove to El Paso. I was coming from Fort Meade. I went down to Georgia to visit a friend down there. Went through Alabama and Mississippi. Hit Louisiana, did whatever. So I stopped at the like 20 miles from the border of Louisiana and Texas. And it was like 8 or 9 o'clock at night. So I stopped there for the night. I know Texas is big because I've driven through it before, but I haven't driven all the way through it east to west. Like I would drive, like I said, I would always come down from like Oklahoma and then down to Dallas. Basically, it's like from coming from west to east, it's like 10 to 20 to 30 to 40 to go east, and then going back, it's 40, 30, 20 to I-10 to go west. Okay, cool. But this one, I was catching I-10 all the way across Texas, all the way through the thickest part. So I was like, okay, I know it's a long ride. Stopped for the night, got my hotel room, rested, got up the next morning, got a good breakfast, checked out the hotel, hit the road 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. It's like 10:30, 11:30, hit the border of Texas, right? Okay, welcome to Texas. Cool. And obviously, you know, when you get there, you see signs for like your major cities. Dallas, so many miles, Houston, San Antonio, whatever. And then I saw the one for El Paso. It was like 900 something miles or whatever. Or like 700 or 800 something miles. And I did the quick math in my head and I was like, I'm not hitting El Paso until around 11 o'clock tonight.
Dang.
And I didn't hit El Paso until like 11:30 that night. And it was the longest drive in the world going on.
Oh, I bet.
Straight through the heart of Texas. It's just like, and if you ever look at a topographical map of Texas, the eastern portion is very green. But as you start going west, it starts getting a lot more brown. And as it starts getting a lot more brown, that's where it said those exits start getting further and further and further away.
Interesting. I didn't know there was any green in Texas.
Oh, yeah.
I've never been, so it's on my list.
Okay. I don't know what led to it, but
I was like, Phoebe tells her mom, to be fair, you've never been good with money. Just like how blunt and she is about it, too.
Yeah.
But this is...
Go
ahead.
After the earthquake, or during the earthquake, when they went to get under the table, did you notice they shot it really well to see in the distance that the meter was still under the chair?
Yes, yeah. And that's how she notices it, isn't it?
I think so, yeah. When Phoebe gets under there, she notices it. I remembered, like you said, when it fell under there, right? And, you know, it went off but it was under the chair, and then the cinematography was really great to still for like, hey, remember this? It's still here.
Yeah.
I didn't realize till later. It was only like a week later they moved into that house.
Though. Yeah, because I think she says like he died last week.
Yeah.
Yeah. Janine comes in. This is Annie Potts coming in, and she's handling the affairs of the estate, I guess.
I knew she was in the movie. I wasn't expecting her until later in the movie. But hearing that voice was so good.
Yeah, we kind of find out, too, Egon was also, I guess, not good with money. This is kind of where Callie takes after him, I guess, because he leaves nothing for them except for the house.
Well, let's be realistic. Do you think he really had much?
No, I don't. No, but I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, she was saying about how he had trouble, like, paying the bills. I'm guessing because he's so focused on preparing for this, right? And preparing for the end of...
Trying to catch Gozer again.
Yeah, end of time.
Okay, let me ask you this. Do you think there was ever anything between Janine and Egon?
I do. I kind of got that sense in the original, and they kind of show the scene again at the end with the lucky coin in the post-credits.
But then there was that, but then there was also she had a thing with Tully there.
Yes, in the second one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that always felt weird when I watched the second one and they were together, because I was so sure her and Egon were going to get together.
What was even weirder was, okay, in the second one, when like he figures he's gonna go save the Ghostbusters, right? And he picks up a suit and she's zipping him up. She's zipping him up in Egon's suit.
Yes. Yeah.
So I don't know if there was. There's so many ways. Like, we're not gonna go into that. That could be so weird in so many ways. And whatever makes consenting adults happy. Not gonna get into that, right? But you know what? Initially I thought maybe when she came in, I thought that was her mom. Like, I thought that was going to be her mom.
Yeah, yeah.
because I remember like Janine always had a thing for Egon, and then she didn't really address it, and then she kind of brushed it off, where she tried to downplay it. But I still think there was something there between the two of them.
So
Because what is Janine gonna be doing out in the middle of Oklahoma?
when do we think Egon had Callie? Because Carrie Coon is 43. She was 40 then. This is 32 years later. Are we supposed to assume she is around 32 and this is after Ghostbusters 2 that he had her and never, like, he abandons her? She never met him. Or did something happen in between the first and second Ghostbusters where she got born? Like, that's what I really wonder.
I think it would be after Ghostbusters 2. Personally, I mean, obviously, there's no way to really prove or disprove this, and I'm probably wrong.
And she had Trevor at like 17.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, 18 somewhere in there, fairly early. But I could see it maybe being after Ghostbusters 2.
Yeah.
I wonder if we will get her mom in
Frozen
Empire.
Yeah. That'd be interesting. I would like to see who Egon had ended up with. And it's a way to keep him kind of involved in the movie, I guess. So they go to the nice 50s diner type place, the burger place.
I would love to eat at that.
Me too. I love the type of style of stuff. But so he's applying for a job, which he is going to get
because of a girl.
Yes,
because he saw the girl on the roller skates and fell in love. That is a typical 15-year-old teenage thing.
And then to lie about your age, I'm 17.
I joined the football team because of a girl in high school. Now, I enjoyed it and had fun, but I joined the football team because of a girl in high school.
That's funny. Okay, so then the chess pieces, this is when we get the first bit with Phoebe with the chess pieces falling off the table, and she's going to put them back up, and when she wakes up, the chess piece has been moved, like a opening move for the pawn piece, which then she counters the move. She does her turn, and then she leaves. But before that, during the night, Trevor goes into the barn, and this is where he finds the Ecto-1, and we kind of get our first little tease of the car.
Now, here's a question. Maybe it's in a deleted scene because I didn't look at those. I wish they would have explained why she would have needed to go to summer school.
To be honest,
because she is obviously very, like, maybe she got bored in class and wasn't doing her work. She's obviously a genius. Like, let's be realistic here. She's obviously way too advanced for a lot of the classes she probably would have been in unless they would have put her in like those advanced placement classes and stuff.
The way I think of it is Callie put her in school so she would have time to sort out the stuff and maybe figure out their situation, because I think that's why Trevor gets the job too. I think it's like, okay, you're going to work and you're going to summer school, and then I'm gonna take care of whatever I need without having to babysit like where her kid is and like where, because she's 12,
Yeah.
So I think not having to worry about where your kid is the whole time while you're trying to go through this stuff is probably what they were doing.
Because they said it's the summertime, and I remember during the summer, like, I would either get a job, or before I could get a job, there'd be like these little, they weren't necessarily summer school, but they were like little programs where you go to like a school and they'd have different things you could do, and we take field trips and blah blah blah, all this other stuff. But I was just wondering, like, wait a minute, like, why is she in summer school? Right? Like, how is she failing classes where she needs to go to summer school all of a sudden? Like, what is?
Yeah, I don't think it had anything to do with her grades. I think it was just they needed to, like, she just probably needed a babysitter type thing and put her in summer school. Enrolled her.
I'll allow it.
I think I have heard of people doing that before, like just enrolling their kid into it without them actually failing. So, this is our introduction to Paul Rudd here, Mr. Gruberson, Gary Gruberson, who is Phoebe's summer school teacher, and he's gonna have a little meet cute with Callie. I like when she's like, can you imagine who they have teaching summer school? And he's like, yeah, it's me.
Yeah. Let's be realistic here. He is probably the worst summer school teacher ever.
He just plays
One,
Cujo and like Chucky and all that.
yeah, like his first movie showing these kids is Cujo. Some of them are probably there because they legitimately failed class and need to actually like make up class so they can pass on to the next grade. So he's like, let's watch Cujo. You don't want to. His first thing he says to him is, "You don't want to be here. I don't want to be here." Like, hey, way to go, teach. Not only that, but this school is still rocking a VCR
Yes.
in 2021.
Yeah.
Or 2019 or whatever.
This does take place in 2021 actually, because in the cave when they look at the years. Yeah.
Yeah. We find out in 2021 there's a school in the middle of Oklahoma still rocking a VCR.
Makes sense. Middle of Oklahoma, I feel like that tracks. So some of those schools are not going to have the fanciest things yet. But yeah, so he plays Cujo. We're also introduced to Podcast here. He who calls himself Podcast because of his podcast, which means I should probably call myself Podcasts because I have so many podcasts.
You know who that kid reminded me of?
No, who?
Remember when we watched 13 Ghosts?
Yes. Yeah. The little kid.
And he kind of looked like him a little bit. Now, granted, that was 20 years. Like, I just realized it's 20 years ago, so it's not the same. They couldn't be the same kid. But for a minute, I thought, is this the same kid from 13 Ghosts?
Yeah, wouldn't that be funny? 13 Ghosts and Ghostbusters are like your two movies you're in. This is where they have another tremor, though, and this is Mr. Gruberson is looking at, because he's a seismologist, which is great, and he's been trying to figure out why the seismic activity is actually happening, since, as he says, there's like no fault lines, there's no fracking, there's nothing here that would have that would cause earthquakes. But Phoebe's like pointing out, hey, is this a seismic map? And just the exchange between these two, they obviously have to have Mr. Gruberson show us the differences between the different types of the EKG or whatever.
Her little joke there to him in the wink was just off.
Yes, but when she's just like, when he's describing this stuff to her and she's like, yeah, I'm not an idiot. It's just, I don't know, it's very Egon. And then you have
I was gonna say that is Egon coming. Yeah, it skipped a generation and it landed 100% with her.
And then you have, like you said, the joke where she winked, and then he asked if it was a joke, and she's like, "Yes, that's why I winked." But Phoebe doesn't believe in ghosts. We learned this when Podcast is talking to her about like some ghost story or his podcast, and she's like, "I don't believe in ghosts." He's like, "Oh, even with all the evidence," and I thought that was really interesting because she's going to become a Ghostbuster. But Casey, I have a question for you. Do you believe in ghosts?
I do. I've never had an encounter or experience with one, but I do.
I do not. So anytime my wife says, "Oh, it's the ghost," I'm like, "It can't be. It's they don't exist." So, but it's funny. We did a whole podcast about it back in quarantine. My friends and I did a podcast called "Quarantine and Chill," and we did episodes of just like random stuff. But one of them we did was like, do you believe in ghosts, aliens, stuff like that? I believe in aliens. I don't believe in ghosts. But Phoebe will believe in ghosts very soon here because they are going to find them. They go to the Shandor mines, and this is a callback to the first movie because Ivo Shandor is the architect of the building who also had the cult in the 1920s that worshipped Gozer.
Did they name him in the first movie?
I believe so, because I remember when the trailer came out and people saw Shandor mining and said, "Oh, this is tying into the this is tying into the first movie."
I mean, I just watched it, but I can't remember if the name was dropped in the first movie, so I wasn't sure if it was something where they dropped it in the first movie and then continued with this, or they made the name up and then connected it with his minds to the first movie.
Um, I'll try to find it. Um, I can't find it off the top, but he also appeared in the video game apparently. So I do think this name was around before this, then for sure.
Okay.
Which is great. I really like this is played by J.K. Simmons, by the way. Ivo Shandor. When we get into the him being in the coffin thing, but that's what it's named after. And then the hieroglyphs that are on the side of the mountain are going to match the ones from the Temple of Gozer in the first movie as well. So just some really nice connective tissue on making this movie feel a little bit more
Part of the universe.
grounded in the universe. This is the type of stuff that 2016 was missing, was any sort of um, handling this type of stuff with the way that the reverence that Ivan Reitman did and that Jason Reitman did. So we get Trevor driving. He not driving yet. He unveils the Ecto one. This is where he's going to start fixing it up. We see more of the chess match continuing. The class is now watching Chucky. This is when Mr. Gerbison is going to notice that they have a ghost trap. He thinks it's a replica, and he's apparently this big. I love what they did with Paul Rudd's character here. They think he's like this big fan of the Ghostbusters, and he mentions New York, and he shows them the footage from the original film. He also asks about Phoebe's dad, trying to see if Callie is single. But after class, they're going to work on opening the trap. But what's your thoughts on Paul Rudd? I know he's one of the reasons that you saw that in the trailer and you're like, oh, I need to see this Paul Rudd with Ghostbusters.
I cannot explain Paul Rudd because he was in Clueless in the 90s, for Christ's sake. And this movie is the only time he's ever looked like he has aged in the last 30 years. But he's usually pretty good. He's pretty funny in most stuff he does. I could look at him and I could believe like he'd probably be about my age, our age, and I could see him probably being a fan of, the ghosts in New York and the Ghostbusters from the 1980s. And then it's just a little stuff he does. Like, let's have another Baskin Robbins thing in this movie. And let's have him interact with the Stay Puft Marshmallow Men.
Yes.
In this movie. And he seems just like such the normal every dude. He just fits in so well. I can't explain.
Yeah, he's like singing and dancing to himself when he's going to get the ice cream. That stuff, like, have you ever been in that good of a mood, Casey, where you're like, I'm going to stop at Walmart. I'm going to get my favorite ice cream or my favorite snack. I'm going to go home and enjoy this. That he just got off this date with this girl he likes. He's like, and he goes to get the ice cream and it gets ruined and he's going to get possessed. But it's like, I've been that guy before. So I do appreciate the little touches Paul Rudd does.
And his character, like I said, in this movie in particular, fit really well to be able to kind of connect those kids to the Ghostbusters of the 1980s, to explain to them what it is that they have. Because they don't know what they have. They just see this weird metal thing, right? And it's just like, what is this?
It also explains it to the new viewers as well, if there's anybody here. So that's also, like, if you're at the movie theater, you haven't seen Ghostbusters before, and you're just like, hey, I like Finn Wolfhard, I'm going to go see this movie. Then you get treated to Paul Rudd explaining it. What are you laughing at?
Okay.
There's people that did. All right. There's people that were like, Stranger Things, I'm going to go see this.
Okay. I was going to say, look, maybe it's for a younger crowd. I don't know. Are there people out there going to see a movie just because of Finn
Oh,
Wolfhard?
I'm
And this is no
sure.
knock on him. He's a fantastic
I'm
actor.
sure there are. Yeah.
But I was just the way you put it, like, oh, I'm a fan of Finn Wolfhard. I'm gonna
Yeah,
go see the
like Tom
Ghostbusters.
Cruise. Like, oh yeah, it's Tom Cruise in it. I'm gonna go see. Yeah.
I mean, look, there are certain actors. If you see they're in something, you're probably going to be more likely to see it, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
your Denzel Washingtons, your stuff like that. Your top notch actors. At one point, it was like a Schwarzenegger, Stallone type movies, or
Right.
you know, uh, but I don't know. I mean, really, to teach their own. But Finn Wolfhard cracked that list. Hey, you know you made it. You know you made it,
Yeah.
kid.
Well, most of the people that would have never seen Ghostbusters, I feel like, are the people that would have been like, oh, let's go see it for Finn Wolfhard because they, you know, there's some people that won't watch old movies and they're watching Stranger Things or they're in the 80s aesthetic then and they're like, oh, let's go see him in this movie. And then they're like, oh, I haven't watched any other ones. And this part explains it to them. And I liked seeing the footage from the first one and just kind of getting what I really like about this is kind of getting an in universe explanation of like what everyone knows about that day that we've watched. Because we know everything that happened. So seeing like them be able to have this, like what people know about it is pretty cool.
Yeah, and you're disconnected by almost 40 years at this point, right? So not only by 40 years, but in Oklahoma you're disconnected by several thousand miles. So it's one thing for everybody in New York that has friends and family who were around in the 80s, and I'm sure everybody who has friends or family who was around in the 80s, they were there that day, right? Because of course everyone was there that day, right?
Yeah,
Well,
it's like when people say they were at like a no hitter and there's only like 60,000 seats and like a million people are like, I was at that game.
yeah, but you had two separate incidents, right? And so but I'm sure there's millions of people who in the New York metropolitan area said they were there that day, and they can pass that information down. But as you get further away from that time, and you get further away from that location, and remember, we didn't have YouTube back then. We didn't have like CNN and headline news and 24-hour news cycles were just starting at that point. So like how much of that news was carried through the newspaper and the nightly news, and what did people in Oklahoma and California hear about that stuff the next couple of days? What did they read about it? Yeah, what is the average person in Oklahoma now know about the Ghostbusters in 1980s New York City? Probably nothing, except for a few people who might be ardent fans or who are into the paranormal, like podcast is, because he's talked about it, right? And he talked about the ghost incident,
Yeah,
the
he
second
says,
ghost incident.
yeah, and he also mentions, I think they all mention um, about how like the ghosts kind of dried up, right? Like this is going to happen when she calls Ray or whatever, but they don't really know why. But Venkman thinks it's because they did their job too well, and that's kind of why like they aren't a continuing thing, and why most people don't know about it. It was probably what 84 and 89 were when the movies came out. So you're looking at just a 5-year period where they were probably at peak ghost busting, and then
It wasn't even that whole 5 years, because remember, you had the peak one in the first one. Then they even went through hard times
that's
between one and
right.
two, because remember they ended up doing they were down to the level of doing like birthday parties at the start of
Yes.
part two.
So you're really looking at two big events that happen, right?
Yeah, and they probably had a good 3-year run total, like maybe 6 or 7 months on each side of one, and 6 or 7 months on each side of two, where things are popping, weird things happen. People are calling the Ghostbusters. They got traps. They're catching Ghostbusters. They're catching ghosts left and right. But like you said, like they said, everything eventually just dries up. Once the ghosts in town know, like, hey man, I wonder if there's like ghost saloons where they go and talk about this stuff. So like,
Yeah,
are they gonna come out
don't
and
haunt
haunt,
this place because the Ghostbusters are getting there.
or we got to get out of New York City?
True. Yeah,
You
so
know,
that was that was an interesting thing about this too, is because I saw some people complain about it when the movie came out of like, wouldn't everybody know about them? One, it's not like the viral times of now, right? But also when you think about, even when they're really busy and probably busting so many ghosts, the people that are seeing them do it, they usually at one tell the people to leave, right? When they're doing it, so they're not in the way. But if anybody sees them do this, that's like one person for each ghost that they
Yeah.
bust, maybe, that then maybe tells somebody else. And it's not spreading everywhere. There's no online, there's no message boards, there's no social media to spread it the way.
Okay. Here's a great example. We just had the Super Bowl a couple weeks ago, right? Or last week, right?
Yeah.
Travis Kelce comes off the field, is angry. He bumps into Andy Reid. And as I'm watching the game and I'm going on Twitter, I saw in real time this become a meme from the time it
Yes.
happened to like maybe 30 minutes later. This became a meme in like 30 minutes or less. And it's still out there now where it's a meme. And it's funny and it's great. But this is the first time I can recollect seeing something like that happen and see it happen in real time from where I've witnessed it live, and then within a matter of minutes it's on timelines everywhere, and then people are commenting and doing on it. It didn't happen. Like you said, there was just
Yeah.
like, okay, the first time they caught Slimer in the ballroom, like remember they kicked everybody out the
Right.
ballroom, and it was just them, and they demolished the ballroom. Even the maitre d was like keeping everybody outside. Ghostbusters 2, at the start of that, where they were in court, it was the prosecutor who got the two brothers that got sent to the electric chair, and the judge. Everyone else, like, once the ghost came out, ran out the room. The only ones who had any interaction with them, like I said, were the prosecutor, who they picked up and drug around the room, and the judge. Now, you got the major incidents that happened at the end of 1 and 2, like I said, where there were people on the street. And I'm sure there were thousands of people who were legitimately there that turned into millions of people who were like, "No, man, I was there. It was crazy, man." Or, and maybe there was some live news coverage at the time,
But I would
but
say
it's not
most
like
people don't
now.
know what actually happened, though, either, right? They say those four are the only ones that know what happened up on that roof, and that's the big thing.
Even in the trailer for Afterlife, the guy who was in the first one, right, who tried to shut him down in the first movie, looks like he might possibly be the
Yeah,
mayor
this man has
of
no
New York
dick,
City
that
in this
guy.
one. Yeah, and I'm so glad he's back because he played that part so well. But he's even brought up like you claim to capture ghosts, but no one's ever really seen it. Like, like what do you want me to do? Yeah, you're trying to pull some shenanigans. No one has ever actually seen. Nobody who's of reasonable mind has ever seen these ghosts and have seen you capture them. All we've ever seen is the destruction you have left behind after you've quote unquote captured these ghosts.
And nowadays, with AI and CG and Photoshop skills, people could edit stuff and then put it on social media. So, like, even if somebody videotaped it, people would be like, well, that's a fake. Like, there is a lot more doubt on some of that stuff now, too, I think, because it is so easy to do that compared to, like, if you were filming that in the 80s, because you'd be like, whoa, how'd they do this? So, you're mostly looking at the truth.
Yeah, I watched this on disc, and Sony had like 9 previews before the movie started. Right, one of them was for Spider-Man: Homecoming.
Probably No Way Home, because it was right before. This movie came
It,
out
it was
a
the
month before No Way Home.
it was the one with Doctor Strange.
Yeah, No Way Home, yep.
Okay, but yeah, he brought up the fact of like, everything that happened with Mysterio. Granted, it's in the MCU, blah blah blah, but Mysterio like fooled the whole world into like he was battling whatever, right? And like
Right.
you said, now we have AI and all this other stuff. Who knows what people are capable of doing? So yeah,
So they go back to the farm after they do the opening the trap. They open the trap and let one of these out, right? It's Zool or one or the other one that they let out, or both of them,
so
because it looks like the dog, right?
it ends up being either the gatekeeper or the keymaster, right?
Yeah, one is Zool, and the other one is. I thought I had it written down. One is Zool. That's the one that possesses the mom.
Yeah, and the one who possessed Sigourney Weaver, Dana, in the
Yes.
original Ghostbusters.
But I can't remember. It doesn't look like I wrote down who the second one was.
I don't even remember. I might have missed it. I don't even remember hearing a name for the other one.
They do
I just know
mention it because they say if those, like, other than just Gatekeeper and Keymaster too, I'm pretty sure they Vin's Clortho is the other name.
you are probably 100% right.
It's on Wiki. That's how I found it.
Yeah,
So
it skipped over my head. I don't know.
I don't know how much they actually say it,
but yeah. Okay, so here's the thing. You are Paul Rudd. You are an Advent follower. You know of the Ghostbusters from the 1980s. Are you opening a ghost trap?
I think hell yeah I am.
Why? Why are you?
I want to see it.
Why?
I want to see it be real.
Paul Rudd could have just been the reason the whole world just had COVID. He opened up that damn trap for no reason.
Yeah.
It's just like in The Mummy. In The Mummy with Brandon Fraser, where they tell him you mustn't read from the book. Like why? Why are you gonna unleash that plague on the earth?
Hey, you tell me not to do something, I'm gonna do it. That's human nature.
But here's the thing: he knows what they were capturing, and that's the thing. The kids wanting to open the trap, I can understand. They have no clue of what they're dealing with. They don't know. Paul Rudd, one, he's an adult. Okay, let's be the grown person in the room. Two, you know what these guys fought.
It was a science experiment, right? Isn't that what he said?
With what, 2 millimeters of plastic?
Yes.
That's another Egon line there too.
Yes, I also love when podcasts is like, I think Gruberson's trying to bang your mom, and she's just like, okay, or yeah, and he's like, that doesn't bother you, and she's like, oh yeah, it does. It makes like inside I'm vomiting, but she doesn't express emotions well or something.
Yeah, and that's just another thing. Is like, man, she nailed that part so great with this.
So then they look through a book, and this is where they find out what ghosts they let out. We kind of get the background again about the gatekeeper, the keymaster. Trevor goes out with the girl Lucky and her friends. They go to the old mine shaft in the Shandor mines. And it's just kind of like each kid is getting different pieces of the puzzle that they're
Eventually
going to
put it all together.
Put together. Yeah, when they get there. This is when she walks into the shed and slides down the fire pole, and we find Egon's lab, the Ghostbusters uniforms, the moment where he shines the light on his degrees.
How many degrees did that dude have?
And
sweet Jesus.
A lot, way too many. I only have one. I can't imagine
and
going.
I want to slide down a fire pole now too. After seeing it in the last
Me
3
too.
movies, the first two, and then this one, it's like, yeah, I want to slide down a fire pole.
I only want to do it though if there's the Ghostbusters stuff at the bottom.
I want him to hit the alarm, and I want him to play the theme song while I slide down the pole.
Yes, they gotta play the theme song. But we get her laying in bed watching the Ghostbusters ad until her mom comes in and she, quickly closes it or whatever. But I just love, she like plays it on repeat. She watches it once and I think she goes back and clicks again. This is when her mom comes in though and says she's going to get dinner with Gary, and she's really confused about who Gary is. It's Mr. Gruberson.
Gary Gruberson?
Yeah. And she tells her mom, don't be yourself, which is such a rude thing to say to your mom. But she jots down the number of the ad as well, and that's gonna come back.
I have not called it, but apparently the numbers for these ads still work, and it leads to some stuff. Yeah.
Oh, really? Interesting. Then we cut to her in podcast testing the proton pack, and they hear a noise at this old abandoned mill, I guess, and then we see a character that they call Muncher, kind of their version of Slimer, I guess, right? They can't get him into the trap though, and he escapes. Trevor is fixing up the car and he drives it around. He's having a joyride, and he's gonna run into Podcast and Phoebe.
You know what? This is
Good.
one of the greatest things because in the real Ghostbusters cartoon and in the movies, we see him take the trap and slide it out. And I don't know if they had wheels on it, but it always just hit under the ghost perfectly, you know. And it's just like they grab it and throw it out there, and it lands perfectly or slides there. They can hit the button and they can catch the ghost. And this poor kid goes to throw it out, it just plops on its side. It's like 6 feet short.
Yes.
And it's like, yeah, that's probably going to happen more often than not, unless you get something with wheels or like something that's able to slide. And I'm like, yeah, if I try to throw that trap, that's probably what's going to end up happening right
Yes, and we get this line where Podcast's like, "Oh, you know how to drive?" And she's like, "No, he's failed his driver's test 3 times." But they get in anyway. And Gary and the mom are Callie are sitting on their date, and we get this whole chase scene through the town with the gunner seat and all that. That's really
there. Okay,
cool.
first of all, the date was awesome. Even though she was getting bored with the science portion of what he was trying to talk to her about,
Yes.
you could tell she was kind of into him. And I got to give him credit for being able to pick up on either A, she doesn't like science, or B, she doesn't like him. Like he was able to pick that up quickly. Like,
Yes,
okay,
yeah.
which one is it? So I know. Like, or do we need to end this date, or do I just need to change this subject? But she just wasn't into science, and we can kind of understand why. Like her dad's a scientist and family, and she probably just didn't have a
And she's
connection
very
to it, and just no reason.
Yeah, I would say she's resentful of her father, right? So she looks at science as kind of probably taking him
The
away
science is
from
the
her.
reason he ran off
So
and abandoned the family.
yes, so she hates science for that, and she has a trouble. That's why she has so much trouble connecting with Phoebe, and she even says she's worried about Phoebe here at the
I wish she
dinner.
would get into some trouble.
And for
Are you sure about that?
oh yeah,
Are you
she's
sure
about
about
to.
that?
Gary is so kind of like blindsided by this because he's like Phoebe's great. Like he has gotten to know her just from
3 days at school.
talking because he has the connection. Yeah, but he has the connection through the science aspect compared to Callie, who has no connection. She doesn't know how to bond with her. And the dad's been out of the picture. We find out that like he was great with Trevor, but when Phoebe came along, he just kind of ditched.
And look, I get all that, but I'm just saying, like, you've only known the child for like 2 days, right? You're just meeting the mom, like to be like, oh, she's great and everything. I'd come across a little weird and creepy. Only if you're as good looking as Paul Rudd are you going to be able to get away with that. If I tried that, I'm probably going to have a talk with Chris Hansen after I leave the restaurant. But
what'd you think of the chase scene and getting that nice gunner seat as it pops out as they're going through town?
The gunner seat is a fantastic addition to Ecto 1. Like, let's be realistic. Like, that was... You still got the old vehicle, okay? I get that, but it's Egon. He's going to tinker with stuff. I don't know why he would have... Okay, so here's the question. Do you think they added the gunner seat after, like, Ghostbusters 2 and before Egon maybe stole everything and moved out to Oklahoma? Or do you think that was an Egon addition after he moved out to Oklahoma?
I think it is something that he upgraded before they left, because I think it'd be hard for him to have added that without having somebody else to drive.
What I'm saying is, do you think he added like, that while they were still busting ghosts before he left to go to Oklahoma? Okay.
Yeah, I do.
I can kind of see that too. But I think that little seat, being strapped in that little seat to fight a ghost there was awesome. The chase scene was great.
Ghost trap on wheels.
Look, the updating and the modernizing of a lot of stuff. Because remember, this stuff is 40 years old. So, like, just a regular trap. Not saying it wouldn't work, but, like, how can we take this to another level? In all fairness, I'm surprised, and maybe it's something that might come in Frozen Empire, there wasn't like a drone ghost trap where either a drone
Well,
drops it.
yeah, I rewatched the trailer. I rewatched the trailer after
I
the
did too.
movie
I
last
watched it this
night,
morning.
and there is a drone. There is a
I
drone trap, and they do. It's with the gunner seat. They're doing like the gunner seat again, and then you just see like the drone.
I didn't see that in the trailer because I watched it after the movie too. So maybe I did, and subconsciously I
Yeah,
didn't realize it. I don't know. Like I can't take any credit for that. But I was like, that'd probably be the next evolution. Is there's a drone with a trap that either drops it or is above the ghost and then picks it up from there.
the way it looked is
Um,
like the drone is the trap, and it's just gonna like you would fly it underneath of the ghost, I guess, to then
yeah,
open up,
I could see that.
which is cool.
Um, I don't know how Ecto One is still rolling after like 40 years.
Trevor
Can't
fixed it
imagine
up.
the horrible emissions. Can't imagine the horrible emissions that thing is
Yeah,
putting
true.
out. That is not passing a smog test by any means. But I enjoyed the chase scene. I enjoyed them trying. I enjoyed seeing the kids trying to trap their first ghost and not really having any idea of what they're dealing with
Yeah.
or what they're doing, but figuring it out on the fly. And then especially Trevor just being like, "Well, this is happening. This is a thing. So let's do this. I guess I'm gonna drive, and I got the car, and you're shooting lasers from a pack on your back. So, and I like how podcast is basically channeling Ray
Yes.
with the goggles, and he is. And one of the things I read on the IMDb page afterwards was like basically each of them was channeling a different Ghostbuster. What's her name is obviously channeling Egon.
Yeah.
Podcast is channeling Ray. Trevor's obviously channeling
Vankman.
Bill Murray's
Yeah.
character, Bankman, and his girlfriend there is channeling
Oh, true.
Winston because she has no connection to
Yeah.
anything. She's just an average person. She's just there and just gets taken along for the ride, basically.
Well, Muncher gets away. Um.
After they cause so much damage.
Yes. Yeah. They then follow to the mountain. And then they catch them, right? And then they get pulled over on their way back. And they get arrested. And we get the line when they're she wants to make her phone call, and they're like, "Who are you gonna call?" And she calls the
God.
Ghostbusters number with Ray answering the phone from his shop, Ray's Occult.
Okay, so two things. One, the nostalgia hit me right in the feels where the sheriff, Bokeem Woodbine, there walks up and goes, "Okay, who are you gonna call?" And I was like, "Man, this movie's gonna make me shed a tear." We'll get to that later. And then, like, I saw that she had captured the number, and I'm like, is she really about to call this number for the Ghostbusters? And is it still in service after 40 years? And of course, Ray has the red phone, and it rings, and it's Ray, and it's his same bookshop. And I'm just like, what is going on here? Like, why are you doing this to me?
And he says he has some harsh words. Egon can go to hell, right? And that she says he died last week, and he's like, "Oh, like crap." This is where we get that Vankman thought they did their jobs too well. Egon starts saying that the world's going to end, and he took Ecto 1 and all the Ghostbuster gear. And that's when she says Egon Spangler was my grandfather, and then time's up. Bokeem hangs up on him.
So I can see if anybody, I figured if anybody from the original Ghostbusters would have went crazy because they thought something was going to happen, I can see it either being Egon or
Yeah,
Ray,
yeah.
right? Um, I definitely could, like, I'm like, yeah, that tracks. I can see Egon going through the books and going through the stories about Gozer and whatever other entities they might have been fighting, and saying, "Oh, there's other prophecies that say it's going to happen here." or looking at other stuff that's happening and connecting to it and kind of saying like, "Hey guys, we're not done with this yet," but everybody else is like, "Dude, move on. Gozu's in the trap. We got him. Whatever. Like, let it go. Remember, we fried the Marshmallow Man. Like, we're done with that." And I could see that kind of breaking up the Ghostbusters, right? Like,
Yeah.
like he took everything, took all their money, left them broke and destitute, and they had to go their separate ways.
Yeah, well, we get Gary and Callie coming to bust him out of jail. And Gary is this is what I love about Paul Rudd. Paul Rudd's like just Callie's doing all this stuff. The cop is talking to them, and he's just like goes over to him. He's like, "Hey, did you guys catch anything?" And they're like, "Yeah, it's in the trap." He's like, "All right, cool." Like, he's just like so invested in it. And then Phoebe tries to take the proton pack and kind of holds up the police here, and Callie has to be like, "Hey, she didn't mean it. Like, we're getting out of here."
Phoebe was about to get shot.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, "Oh my god." And during this, we get the cave. The cave starts awakening with something, and this is when Gary goes to Walmart, and we get the little Stay Puffed Marshmallow Men, which is a nice little callback here. What was your thoughts on the little Stay Puffs committing suicide with each other all over the place?
Okay, so I remember this clip came out either as like a preview clip for the movie or it came out like right after the movie released. So like I had no context of it. I just remember seeing I didn't even know it was an actual Walmart, right?
Oh yeah,
So yeah, I wonder how much I wonder how much money exchanged hands for the product placement. And this was back when they still had 24-hour Walmarts.
yeah,
But it just showed like Paul Rudd walking through a store, right? And it didn't show him grabbing the Baskin Robbins, which would have been even better. But it just shows him like walking down the aisle, and then all of a sudden the Stay Puft Marshmallows like go out and they bite his hands, and like I was like, okay, that's cute. But now you see the whole context, right? You see, okay, the little Stay Puft guys are just crazy. They're on a Roomba. They're running over their own people. They're making s'mores out of their buddies. They're just doing crazy stuff. They're lighting themselves on fire on the grill. And then what happens? Paul runs into one of the dogs
yeah.
in the dog food section.
Yep, and he gets like blasted out of this Walmart when they're when they're racing, like a chase sequence here, and then he gets um what kind of crashed into a car, and this is when he gets possessed.
Well, that was his car.
Yeah,
He jumped in because remember they blew the windshield off of
yeah.
his car when they let the ghost out, and they showed him like when he was driving the kids somewhere
Oh
earlier.
right.
When he's taking the kids home, he didn't have a windshield anymore. So I'm hoping he met Callie at the date because if he didn't, he's picking her up in that car. Like that can end the date pretty quick.
True, true. I think she would have been into it. Um, the kids go to the mines, and this is when we get Shandor being in the casket. We also get the dates on the wall, which is 1883, 1908, 1945, 1984 being the first film, and then 2021 for this movie. And we see that like Egon has a trap that keeps some of these ghosts down, and it starts causing the tremors. And that's when they realize, oh, this is what's causing the earthquakes.
Yeah.
Shandor wakes up, but then immediately falls back down when the trap works. It's like kind of like keeping it at bay.
Yeah. It's keeping whatever's inside the earth still inside. And whatever, like if something manages to come up, that's going to wake Shandor up.
Yeah.
But he can't kind of manage to wake up out of his slumber because there's proton packs, set up around the thing trying to keep everything down. So
Yeah. Interesting setup. During this time, Callie finds her dad's lab, and this is when she finds pictures of herself as a kid, and she kind of realizes that he's been tracking her life progress, and he does care. He just had to leave to kind of, what we'll find out is pretty much to take care of this thing that's going on.
yeah, he had to help save the world. Like
Right. The ghost comes in the lab and possesses her. This is where Zool possesses her. And when they come home, we get the "There is no mom, there is only Zool."
Man, the little callbacks to the first one were just so good.
Yes, without redoing the first one, right? Like, I, I could see people. Some people might think it's like, oh, they're just kind of redoing some of the same stuff, but it's like it feels totally different because it's in a different location. The it's not really similar in that regard. It's just kind of like continuing to keep Gozer and them at bay. So I was kind of fine with this. We get the other tremor here, and this is Gary is now possessed, and he is removing the trap so that way it starts letting out all of the ghosts. And we see like the skeleton at the diner, right? Like the skeleton ghost at the diner, and like all these ghosts going through the town.
And he is the keymaster.
Yes.
And okay, so here's the thing. When like I said, I've watched the first two in the last couple weeks, right? And Rick Moranis' character was it Tully ended up being possessed by
Yeah.
a dog, became the keymaster, and Dana was the gatekeeper. I thought it was kind of hinted at, but I wasn't totally sure that they had to get it on in order to make some things happen in the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't expressly say it, but
True.
when it cuts back to them, you kind of get that hint. And as a kid, like I didn't know what I was looking at, but when I watched it a couple weeks ago, I was like, "Oh, did they just?" But they don't really address it. It's just one of those like, it's there. Make of it what you will.
They say it in this though too,
But
don't they? Because
yeah, they addressed it in this one. Like, yeah, that's what they have to do in order to allow Zool to
yeah,
come
because
out,
Lucky
right?
says like "Go mom" or something, right? When she's talking about their mom, when she's talking about Trevor's
Or
mom.
she's like, yeah, they have to get together carnally or something, and it's like, oh. And when she said that, I was like, oh, so Tully
Dana,
and
yeah.
Dana did get it on in the first one. Like, okay, I missed that as a kid, obviously, but I wasn't too far off when I was like, that looked kind of weird
Yeah.
a couple weeks ago. But maybe I was just reading too much into it. No, I was not. I was reading that perfectly.
They find out that the farm is not a farm, it's a trap. This is a big trap for all of the ghosts and to stop Gozer.
I picked that up as soon as she was like, "This isn't a farm," and I kind of looked at it. I was like, "Oh, he set that whole thing up to be a trap," and that's when she busted out with it was a
Yeah.
trap.
And we kind
And
of
I was
saw
like,
him
"Man, all we
try
needed
it
was
in the opening and it didn't work.
yeah." But like, I didn't realize like he was making the entire farm, and that's why they just kept
Dirt
calling him a
farmer.
dirt farmer because they kept seeing him dig, and they're like, all he just does is plant dirt. He just digs, but he doesn't
He's put
grow
all the
anything. And I
traps
was
in.
like,
Yeah.
"Oh, yeah."
It's great. Lots of little hints on what's going on throughout the movie. They go down into the lab, and this is when they are going to change into their gear. They're going to go to the police station to try to get the Ecto One and the rest of the gear. Uh, Gary and Callie kiss as they are possessed, and I guess this is where they're going to get it on before we meet back up with them.
Yeah, they cut away from it, but they kind of talk about it later. Did we? Yeah.
Yeah, and Podcast lets Muncher out of the trap because they need to be able to get the proton pack, which is this impossible lock to pick. Apparently, like Phoebe said, she can't pick it. So opening up the track and knowing that this is like metal guarded, Muncher is going to eat through it, and he did.
That was
It was,
genius.
yeah.
That was pure genius. But as soon as he said that and he did that, I was like, I never would have thought.
It's one of those things where it's like, maybe not the best idea, but we can catch him again. We need to get this. We need to get this.
You know what it is? That's a video game moment right there,
Yes,
where like the answer's right in front of you, but
like a riddle.
sometimes it's so
Yeah,
obvious. You're like, yeah, you're like, you want me to let this ghost out so I can get in there, and then you realize, oh, okay.
yeah. And so Shandor wakes up and Gozer's climbing out of the hole, and he's like, "We can rule together," and she just rips him in half.
Yeah, J.K. Simmons was in this for like what 2 minutes and 20
Easy,
seconds or
yeah. Probably
something.
like 3 days of filming. He probably had it nice and easy.
If that, he might have done it all in one day, knocked it out.
Maybe. Sometimes filming, like, they'll take forever on, especially movies. They'll kind of take longer on
Yeah,
scenes, do multiple takes.
but he's also an Academy Award
Yeah.
winner. It might have been one of those like, look, I got other stuff going on. I can give you a day. Let's do what we got to do in this one day. So you rearrange the shooting schedule. You move some stuff over
Yeah,
here.
because he's really only just
It's like,
on that
look, we
one
got
set. That's all he's on.
yeah, we got Simmons for one day, so we got to film any and everything we got with him in there right now.
So then they use the trap on Zool, which rescues their mom. This is where, she goes and Phoebe has to kind of stall with her bad jokes while Podcast is like using the little remote control to get right underneath of Zool, and he does activating the trap, and it kind of like sucks in the ghost and spits Callie out. And I just love this when they're driving their mom back, and she's just like talking about everything that's going on, and Phoebe's just like, yeah, I know. I know. And then she just like activates the gunner seat and then like comes back in and is like, yep, mom, I know. Like, they're so far ahead of where Callie is at in this moment.
And even the dress she's wearing was kind of reminiscent of Dana's dress from Ghostbusters 1 when she was possessed by Zool.
True. So then, they have to worry about Gozer, who's still out there. They have to worry about the other one. But Gozer really comes back fully when Zool is going to still get out and is going to possess Lucky. Because so Gozer goes in, the trap fails, right? The farm trap fails again, and
Didn't have
not enough power, and you get Gozer just ripping the ghost trap up, and Zool's gonna jump out and possess Lucky. This is where our OGs show up. What was your thoughts? Did you know that they were all in it, or?
I knew they were in it, but I thought maybe they would just make like little cameo appearances. Like like I said, I didn't watch the previous one from 2016.
Yeah, that they played different
know,
characters and they were all in it, I think.
They just popped up for like a weird random scene here or there. Like I thought it would kind of be almost like a Janine thing. Like I thought it was gonna be like, okay, we saw Janine earlier as Janine. She came in. We saw Ray. I thought maybe we would just see. I thought maybe we'd see something where like Ray called Peter and Winston, and that was it. Like I didn't think we were gonna see them pop up in Oklahoma, strapped up, ready to go.
Yeah. So I guess with the phone call from Ray and the confirmation that this stuff might actually be happening and that it is Egon's granddaughter, they step into action and come back. We get a nice callback again.
How did they get down there so quick?
It is like a day or two later, right?
I thought this was all the same night.
No, because
I mean, obviously
they were in jail at night. They come back the next morning, and that's when she gets possessed by, like, that's when they find their mom. It's daylight out again, being possessed by Zool. So I do think it is the next day.
I guess maybe because Winston is mega rich.
Private plane,
jet. And maybe he just like they kind of went down there. So maybe I can give him that. But I was like, man, they got down there pretty quick to the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma.
Well, we get "Are You a God?" and Ray does say yes this time.
Man, okay. So as I watch that, "Are You a God?" and I'm just because once again I watched this a couple weeks ago, and I remember the whole conversation of Ray. Someone asked you,
you say yes. Yeah.
And I'm just sitting there, and I'm kind of like I have the same look on my face that Winston and Peter do. Well, I'm just looking at my TV like, dude, we just like
you gotta say it this time.
Just had this conversation. Like, come on. And he still stalled, and I'm like,
I know. I was like, he was still stalling there. But we get them trying to uh they cross their streams, but Gozer's able to untangle it, I guess because there's only three, right? Like there's only three of them, it's not the four of them. So they end up Gozer getting out of it. Phoebe gets up and shoots a beam. This is great though, because when the originals get blasted back, like Venkman is trying to stall as one of them is trying to get something ready, and she just totally like Gozer just like stops it, and he's like, "Oh yeah, that was worth a
Yeah,
shot."
yeah. We tried.
But then Phoebe is going to get up and shoot the beam, and then this is where we get Egon's ghost helping her, and you can actually see the ghost. Um, and then we get Trevor shooting the towers, which is going to get the trap working. He gets the power going when he shoots the towers. And then they're all, the OGs get back up. They're all shooting them, and then Callie steps on the pedal to activate it, and all the ghosts get sucked back in. We get Gary and Lucky are freed. What was your thoughts here of Ghost Egon and kind of helping out his granddaughter here?
I shed a tear, man. Like a legitimate couple
Yeah,
tears.
same.
Um, I talked about it before. Said, man, I miss Harold Ramis. I talked about it earlier on here. Like one of the reasons a third Ghostbusters film for a while was stalled was falling out between a lot of people, and then once he passed away, a lot of them thought they really couldn't and didn't want to do it without Harold Ramis. I mean, he wrote the first one, understandable. No knock on that. This was perfect. This was a perfect way to honor Harold Ramis, to honor the character of Egon, without it being too much, without him talking. Like he didn't say a word. He was just there. And for someone like me, I'm sure for someone like you, for someone like us who was fans of the franchise, it kind of felt like, yeah, Egon was still there. And I went into this movie with no knowledge of what happened.
Right.
I didn't
right.
want to read any spoilers. I just, I was just like, man, let me watch the movie with no knowledge. I just knew the original characters showed up in different parts. Like I said, I didn't think they were going to play as significant of a role as they did. I thought it was cool to see his ghost not be visible, helping his granddaughter out. That would have been fine.
Yeah.
Like I would have been happy with just that. But to see his physical ghost there, I lost it, man. It got to me.
Yeah, it was something I wasn't expecting when I was in the theater. Again, I just kind of thought they would do the clever stuff they did before. It works. It's very on the border. I think sometimes, like if it was much more longer, I think you could say, okay, you're maybe doing too much. But I think they left it at the perfect amount of time for this. But also, what makes this work so much is not just that it's Egon, but that they made him so important to this story by having Callie not get along with him, that when you get the hug, it actually means something. It's not like this empty thing in there, it is like a meaningful thing that's been built up in this story.
When you get to the point where she went into his little secret lair and realized, like, oh, he really did love me, but he just had to leave for whatever reason. When, like I said, they did a great job of making Phoebe look very Egon-esque.
Yeah.
Right? And to see him just, kind of walk up and help her with the proton pack, I was like, that's when I lost it.
Yeah. And then, even getting that look where like the three other Ghostbusters are looking over at him, like almost in disbelief of seeing him there is
Ray apologizing to him, right? I was wondering if there was gonna be a comment of like, are we gonna have to bust him now?
I'm glad they didn't do that.
I'm kind of, Yeah, I'm glad they didn't either. But it was one of those things. Even like I said, Ray apologizing and Egon kind of acknowledging that, and then him having that moment with his granddaughter. Or with his
Yeah.
daughter, with Callie. That was great.
And then Paul Rudd just kills it here again. When he gets out of this thing, he's like, my hands hurt from galloping. Why am I bleeding? And she's like, you headbutted a park bench, like just, I don't know, really great lines for Paul Rudd. We find out Ray is the one that listens to podcast.
Yeah, the only
Yes, the
one
only
who
subscriber or something.
and it would be Ray. It
Yes.
would be Ray.
And he like calls it by the
Like,
shortened acronym and everything. He's like, "Oh, you're that
yeah.
guy."
You hit your stride around episode 46.
Yes.
And so that was a great touch too.
Yeah, and then
Harold.
and then it ends with the for Harold, which is a nice touch, really nice touch. And then we flash to New York, and then we just kind of get the Ghostbusters theme right at the end here, which now we can kind of say that the trailer for the next one has us in New York. So I'm assuming that was some sort of hint of this is where they want to go, just showing like the New York stuff, and then playing the Ghostbusters theme. I don't know.
Well, there was that. You had the mid credit scene. I'm guessing
Dana and Peter.
Dana and Bankman are still together,
and they're doing
right?
the card guessing, mind reading thing.
Which and then he admits he marked the card and he just gets shocked all over.
Yes.
The place. So yeah, right. Yeah. Kind
of. And he does say he only shocked the guys, right? He never shocked the girls.
Yeah. Sigourney Weaver still looks great, man.
Did you think it? Because I totally forgot, because it shows her in the castle. I totally forgot about the mid credit scene, by the way. But I
think they kind of spoiled it a little bit by putting her in by
saying in Sigourney Weaver. I'm like, when was she in this? And then it's like, boom, right into it. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I think they could have waited till for her to appear on the screen or after that scene, so they didn't spoil that. And I like the final scene with Annie Potts with
Janine and
Janine and Winston. Winston talks about how he's always going to be a Ghostbuster, and then I guess that kind of gives us the hint of. So one, I think the coins are going to come back into play, because she says she has one and she gave Egon a coin. I think those coins are going to somehow come into play in
Frozen Empire.
Frozen Empire, if I had to make some reckless speculation. And the fact that red light flashing on
containment unit,
the ghost containment unit means it's probably failing.
That's what I think.
But I thought she said it was a Starbucks now.
Subway. They said Subway, actually.
I thought she said Starbucks, or someone said it was a Starbucks.
I thought Ray said it was a Subway, but I can't be sure now.
Maybe he did say Subway. I don't know.
But yeah, so it is abandoned. Maybe it was a Subway, didn't make it, and now it's back open again. And they just left the containment unit there.
Failing. Well, I mean, okay. Let's say you decide you decide to become a franchisee of Subway. You decide to open up a Subway this location.
Yeah.
Right? What the hell are you going to do with what you have no clue what's in that container?
Yeah.
You probably can't even get it
leave
open.
it. But you think the inspector, like health inspectors, would be like, hey, like we need to make sure this isn't like cancerous or whatever.
They might have their ways of like seeing if there's any sort of leaks or anything.
Yeah.
And if it's not doing anything, it's one of those. It's best if we just leave it alone instead of open it up and see like cause some havoc. But like I said, with the red light blinking, usually red lights are not good things. Right?
Yeah.
So I'm guessing there's stuff coming out, and that probably leads us into whatever's happening.
And he's waving in the Ecto-1 too. So that's it seems pretty clear that he is going to open it back up again. We also learn he's covering Ray's rent too for Ray's Occult. So he's just being an all-around good dude, Winston Zeddemore.
Yeah, Winston's definitely a good dude, and I'm kind of glad Eddie Murphy didn't get that role. He was originally supposed to be Winston, and I don't think it would have been the
Yes.
same character with Eddie Murphy. Might have been funnier, but I don't think
No.
the franchise would have been the
No, it would
same.
have been more funny, yeah. You need the straight man. I feel
Yes.
like he's the straight man of it. So, all right. So, let's get to our ratings here. This movie had a 63% on Rotten Tomatoes, 45 on Metacritic. It got an A minus cinema score, and on IMDb it is at a 7.1. Because I'm a Ghostbusters fan, I gave this a 5 out of 5. But I think if I am not, I think the movie is still good enough to be like a 4-star. But if I'm thinking more critically, I guess I've seen people give this 2 and 3 stars. For me, I really enjoy the vibe of the movie. I enjoy the setting of the movie, and I think the actors really killed it. For me, because I am biased, it's a 5-star movie in that regard. But
Okay, so I've talked about my history enough uh, throughout this podcast with the Ghostbusters franchise. We've been recording for about an hour and 48 minutes as of right now. And for the last hour and 48 minutes, I've been struggling to hold inside what I've thought of this movie. This was a goddamn great movie. Within the first 5 minutes, I was hooked. As soon as the movie opened and you see the mountain and you hear the sound of the proton pack firing on, right?
yeah,
I got hooked. And then, like I said, I was able to recognize, oh, that's Egon. That we can't see his face. And then, like I said, seeing how much Phoebe channeled Egon, and I was just like, this movie had it hooked into me immediately. And it's one of those where I legitimately was like, why did I wait to see this movie? Um, I'm um, I'm upset with myself in general because I should have seen this movie previously. I don't know why,
mm-hmm.
and I'm almost ashamed that I did. Um, and like I said, there were little touches that they made all throughout the movie. This is to me, and I haven't seen Top Gun, the new Top Gun. I heard that's another great legacy remake where they kind of introduce it to a new audience, but still have enough continuations from the old one, but where it can still continue on. This is how you do it, and this is a 5-star movie out of me. This immediately vaults up to one of my favorite movies of the last 5 or 10 years. It really was great. I will be the first to admit though, like I said, I am just like you. I'm biased. Um, I had a connection to the
Yeah,
franchise. I've just literally recently watched the other two. That could be coloring it, to an extent, but I still thought it was just fantastic.
yeah. So I like that it wasn't in New York. I know some people wanted in New York. I am glad we're going back to New York though, in Frozen Empire. But I am I do think Frozen Empire can be even better than this movie. But I think this one will always kind of hold a special place for me because of the Egon stuff, and then also just being different. It wasn't afraid to be different, taking it out of New York, doing its own thing. Yes, it ties in a lot of those first movie villains and stuff, which I can understand. Some people may be thinking that's repetitive, but I think they did it in a very interesting way than just like, oh, we're redoing the first movie again. So I was a big fan of it.
Most definitely.
All right, so what
Okay,
are we watching next?
so as we're recording this episode is going to come out in March. I'm not sure when, but it's going to come out in March. I'm assuming.
I think like end of
Really, I thought it
March,
was the
yeah.
first or second weekend in March.
No, because we're doing every other right now. So we just released on the 16th. we have Mr. and Mrs. Smith dropping on the 1st. Ghostbusters drops on the 15th.
Okay.
So you're looking at the 29th of March.
All right. So that is a picture perfect time. Because, as you've known, and I've mentioned it on here, I am a wrestling fan. I've been a wrestling fan since I was 4 and 5 years old, and first was introduced to the worlds of Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant, the Iron Sheik, and all these larger than life characters. And I remember the Rock and Wrestling cartoon and the Rock and Wrestling era. And all this ties in because the end of March, beginning of April, is WWE's biggest event of the year, WrestleMania. Jordan, people who are listening, I'm going to introduce you to 3 of my favorite all-time matches in the world of professional wrestling. These 3 matches are by no means violent in any way. They are physical contests. It is a physical sport and activity. They are not ultra-violent in any way. I think all 3 of them are great examples of when wrestling is good, it is damn good. They tell great stories. 2 of them happened at a WrestleMania. One at WrestleMania 21 in, I think, 2005. The other one over like WrestleMania 25, which would have been 2008, 2009, somewhere in that range. Another one happened in 2013, 2014 at an event called NXT Takeover Brooklyn. One of them changed the wrestling business in a great way for a lot of people, including me. So I will send you a link. You have Peacock, correct? Okay. So
Yes,
you
I
can
do.
find all these matches on YouTube, but I'm going to send you a link with time codes and how to watch it on the Peacock network, like where to find it, how to watch it. So for the first one, we are going to watch from WrestleMania 21. It is the match of Shawn Michaels versus Kurt Angle, who is an Olympic gold medalist. He's the only Olympic gold medalist in WWE history.
Shawn Michaels
versus Kurt Angle. And I'll send you the link with the time code where you can start the time code to watch it starting from there. The next one is going to be, they made standalone shows to kind of talk about matches and the stories that led up to them, called WrestleMania Rewind. Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker, which is noted or thought of as one of, if not the greatest matches in WrestleMania history. It is a women's match from NXT TakeOver Brooklyn. Sasha Banks versus Bayley. And the time codes of when to start these are included. Now, including the time codes because WWE, for a lot of their major events and their major matches like this, put together small video packages before the match to let people know basically the story that led up to the match. And you kind of get to see what happened and how and why, and they have music and little video interstitials and these things. And they're maybe like 2-3 minutes long, right? And then that leads into the match. And then you get the entrances with the match and everything else. Another great thing is these happen at major events. So like WrestleMania, starting from WrestleMania 21 was in LA, 22 was in Chicago, 20, I can't remember, I think 23, if not WrestleMania 24 in Orlando for sure. They started holding them in actual, outside of arenas and in actual stadiums. So like a couple years ago, they held it here in LA. This year, they're holding it at Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia. Rumor has it next year, WrestleMania is going to be where the Super Bowl just was in Las Vegas. I'm not sure the name of that particular stadium.
Allegiant, I think.
Yeah, I believe you're correct. Typically, when they hold them at these stadiums, because they don't need the whole 100 yards for the football field that football field uses, even minus what they use for stage work and their entrance ramp. They can outdraw the Super Bowl. Now, some of those numbers are fudged, like I'm not going to lie. Some of those numbers are a little off or fudged. But they still can draw hundreds of thousands of people to an event from all around the world. And one of the great things is as you look at the crowd, you'll see people of all races, creeds, colors. Mm-hmm. They always talk about how it is a worldwide event and they get people from all these different countries. So the one piece of advice I'll give to you before you watch these matches, right? And I will explain the advice I'm giving to you after we talk about this next week.
Okay.
Do not watch the match. Follow the story. Like, I don't want to explain that to you now because it'll take away.
I think I get what you mean, though. Like, don't pay, like, too much attention to, like, the X's and O's of the wrestling match, right? It's going to be more about the characters that they're setting up in the wrestling match and the story going with it.
Yeah, follow the story. If you follow the story, it can make for a better experience. Listening to it with the great announcers they have gives it a great experience. And the crowd will key you along and they can give you a great experience as well. Now, I'm not expecting you to become a wrestling fan after watching these. It's not for everybody, and I get that. But you have opened me up to various things that I own the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but I wouldn't have watched it, honestly, if it weren't for you. And you really enjoy it, and I appreciate the fact that you opened me up to that and showed me how and why you enjoy it and how much you know about the Lord of the Rings and everything that goes along with that. My friend Kristen, who lives in Colorado, did the same thing with me a couple years ago with the Harry Potter series, where we kind of had watch-alongs and we texted back and forth, and she explained a lot of things about it to me, like especially from the very beginning of the first one, like, wait, this kid lives under the stairs? And then she explained, like, yeah, no, he literally lives under the stairs. Like, as a matter of fact, the first chapter of the first book is called, like, The Kid Who Lives Under the Stairs or something. And then, she held me out. The whole Harry Potter series was great. Very long because it was all 7 movies or something, but she shared that experience with me, and I'm very thankful for it. Like I said, not expecting you to become a fan of it or anything, and I get that, but I want you to see the best that it has to offer and why I enjoy it the way I do. There's still some things I watch from like that was just pure absolute garbage. But some of the best stuff there is really great, and I think a lot of people can enjoy some of the best stuff.
Yeah, so I was going to kind of say something like that too. Like, I know people are probably listening to this wanting to see films, and probably were even mad when I picked a TV show. But this is a passion thing of Casey's here, and I'm going to give it a try. But
look, in all fairness, like, we've had some stuff that each other person didn't like as much as one person thought. Like, you thought I was going to enjoy The Office more. I still have to give that more of a chance. But the 3 episodes I watched,
right.
I was on, like, I watched it once again. You showed me why you liked it and everything, and I appreciated that. But I had my issues with it. So I'm pretty sure there might be some things where you're like, I just didn't get this, or this didn't make any sense, or I wasn't into this. And that's understandable. Like I said, this is not for everybody. But, like, part of this between the two of us is one of us hasn't seen something the other one enjoys.
Right.
And,
the original name of this was not Films for the Very First Time. It was a name that was already taken. So it wasn't supposed to be as restrictive as the title suggests.
So, but I think, I'll be honest, I don't have high hopes. Like I said, I don't think you're going to become a wrestling fan. I don't think you're going to give it 5-star stuff. I think there's some things you might enjoy from them, but I also think you're going to be like, yeah, this isn't for me. But I just want to show you, like, when you see how passionate I am about wrestling a lot, like I said, this is some of the best it has to offer. And we'll talk about how and why next week or next time.
All right. Well, if you want to give us any sort of feedback or reach out to us what you thought about Ghostbusters Afterlife, you can leave it in the comments here. on the YouTube where you can like and subscribe. You can rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, or you can reach us at our social medias in the show notes below. Have a great rest of your week, and we will catch you next time.